Yo guys, Superior David here, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts on what I think are the best decks in the game that of course you can use to hit legend. Now, all this comes with the disclaimer that you should not craft anything yet. We'll probably receive a balance patch sometime next week, so if you are strapped for dust, do not craft anything. If you need to ask me if you should be crafting something, you probably shouldn't be crafting it, FYI. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy these decks, and if you do, make sure to hit that like button, also subscribe to the channel, because of course, as always, it really does help me out. And I guess with that, let's get into these decks. Okay, so first up, we have the deck that I think is truly dictating the meta right now, and that would be Quest Demon Hunter. Now, the idea behind this deck is that in the early turns, you just want to draw a card so you can advance the different phases of your quest. This gives you like a lot of like incremental mana cheating, and sometimes this allows you to win games before you even like complete your quest. It's actually quite crazy. If you discount cards like the Guild Trader or Silver Moon Arcanist, especially, you know, if you pop like a Relic of Dimensions and get these cards potentially like down to 0 or like 1 or 2 mana, you can have these like insane pop-off turns like 5 through 7 really, where you can play like either of these, maybe multiple, and then you drop like Fel Barrages with Unleashed Fells, and that could just like OTK your opponent. It's actually quite filthy. But I think, you know, like if you're new to this deck, I think you should just stick to the general approach, which would be, you complete your quest, you drop the Kurtrus, and this allows you to, just further discount your cards, and then you will typically like close out the game with like a Jace comboed with a discounted like Guildy or Silver Moon Arcanist, because these cards will increase the spell damage on the spells that Jace recasts, so you can get just like insane amounts of damage off the Jace. But one thing I think is really important to note is when you commit Unleash Fel with this deck. Unleash Fel, I say, is the best card here because it has so much burst potential as well as healing. And I think this is what makes Quest Demon Hunter really good into one of the most annoying decks on ladder, Miracle Rogue. Being able to like clear off your opponent's board, get a full like wave of healing, like Reno Jackson value of healing, is just ridiculous. But overall, this deck is very powerful. I think it's the one dictating the meta. It really just rose up as a counter to those pesky Miracle Rogues, but I don't think it's the best deck in the game because it certainly has its counters. And of course, that counter would be yet another rogue deck in the form of Deathrattle Rogue. I feel like Deathrattle Rogue has really risen up in popularity over the past week as people have realized that the Scourge Illusionist is super disgusting, especially with the sketchy information. And of course, you could get like just double the value if you could combo this with Snowfall Graveyard. This like little combo here, the sketchy information with the Scourge Illusionist, allows you to just get these big old death rattles like the Invinciblue, the Infectious Ghoul, the Burning Blade Alkalite. You can just get those down like really cheaply and really fast, and then like you could like combo them with like Snowfall Graveyard a lot more like quickly and easily. It's just really filthy. And I know there's like another build going around that runs like the Colossals and the 6 mana 4/4 that with Rush and that summons a 2/2. I don't really like that build as much as Johnbrace build. It seems very fine, but I think this build will do a lot better against Quest Demon Hunter just because of the Infectious Ghouls. These Infectious Ghouls give like any slower deck a real problem, because once you start like doubling up this death rattle and like just getting this onto multiple minions, it becomes like near impossible for like any control class outside of like Priest to really clear off your board. And it's hysterical, and I love just watching classes just struggle to clear off these Infectious Ghouls. Just really funny time. Now I know from my YouTube comments that people are not the biggest fan of Deathrattle Rogue, or really just rogues in general. I know Miracle Rogue is also very hated, so I think this next deck will be one that you'll want to keep an eye on, that I think is just very excellent for farming both Deathrattle Rogue and Miracle Rogue. Also has some good game against Quest Demon Hunter, and that would be, surprise, surprise, Frost Death Knight. This is the list that I put together and that I hit top 50 legend with. I played around 100 games with this deck, and I could safely say that it absolutely dumps all over Miracle Rogue as well as Deathrattle Rogue. And the idea behind this deck is that in the early turns, you want to just get like little bits of chip damage in with like your Bone Breaker, or like your little like Harbinger of Winter, or your Rhymefang Sword, which will give you some nice mana cheating as well. Or you can also slow down the game with the Far Watch Post, which I feel like is just MVP against those rogues and demon hunters. Far Watch Post, really good meta call right now, by the way. Then moving into the mid game, you want to start like just slowing things down by using like Icy Touches, Howling Blast to kind of just like slow down your opponent's big minions, or in the case of Miracle Rogue, freeze their face so they can't bash you with a Draka weapon. And then like moving into the late game, you could just keep stalling out things even further with like the super incredibly broken Frostworm's Fury. This card really good at just stalling out the game, especially since we got the Lady Death Whisper, which can get us like multiple copies of this, and it becomes even more broken if you could like get some mana cheating on this with the where are you, the Rhymefang Sword right over here. And then essentially to close out games, you'll go in with like a Guild Trader, and if you got some managing with the Rhymefang Sword, or like even if you don't have any managing with the sword, you can still get a lot of damage in with like your Guildies because of the Glacial Advances. This card is just broken in my opinion. 3 mana, deal 4 damage, your next spell this turn costs 2 less. It allows you to get like insane amounts of burst in, and I think eventually this card will like totally get nerfed, because you can like currently get this off a School Teacher, so you can get like a 1 mana Glacial Advance, combo that with like freaking Brand command, which we run in this deck to get like all this damage and mana cheating phase. It's just so ridiculous. One big change I made to the list from the one I posted earlier on YouTube would be that I put in the Astalor for the Finley. Now, that's not to say I didn't find Finley to be quite nice. I feel like Finley definitely excels more against rogues and demon hunters, where games will typically end by like turns like 6 through 8. Astalor is pretty good against slower decks. I've been running into more like priests lately, and Astalor was definitely more of an MVP there. And then one more thing I want to say is that the Horn of Winter is low-key a very powerful card. When you use this Horn of Winter, is probably one of the more skill testing elements of this deck, because you can have like these insane, really like early game tempo swings where like sometimes you drop out Brand, then you can play a Horn of Winter so you can get like a Battle Cry, like a Nerubian Vizier, or even like a School Teacher off in the same turn, like much earlier than you should be able to. Or even like the Thessarian, which is low-key like a really powerful card. It's basically a lot of times it's just like 4 mana, deal like 6 to 9 damage face depending on how your opponent clears this off. It's actually really freaking powerful. But anyways, enough of me gushing about Frost Death Knight. We got another deck to talk about that I think is very powerful, and oh my goodness, scares the living freaking bejesus out of me. Definitely the best deck in the game right now, and that would be freaking Blessed Priest, which actually got a little bit of love in the new expansion with the form of the Animate Dead. And the idea behind this deck, which, you know, I feel like most of us are familiar with by now, but for those who aren't, you essentially, you know, you cheat some mana with the Radiant Elemental, you play a bunch of spells, you draw through your deck with Handmaiden, you refresh that mana with Priestess Valish, and then you slam a big old Boon of the Ascended on whatever minion you buffed up, so your opponent just like can't deal with it, and then they usually just cry and concede, or they stubbornly hang on in there and you just smork them down with your big old boony dudes. Maybe you steal some stuff from their hand with Identity Theft, and it's just a really filthy deck, especially since going back to the new card Animate Dead, it gives you just more redundancy with your Radiant Elementals. So now you could drop down Radiant Elemental just like earlier in the game, cheat some mana early on to help maybe like play spells to get your Handmaidens down faster, then you play Animate Dead to get the Radiant Elementals back, and that allows you just more redundancy for popping off. So just Animate Dead really filthy in this deck. Also the Sunwell, I feel like a lot of times I think I'm safe against this deck, then they go the Sunwell and they get just some random spells that could just destroy me. So just really frustratingly powerful deck. Will 100% get nerfed in my opinion. I'll be shocked if it doesn't. Now to round out the list, we've got Aggro Druid, which I feel like has just been like a steady, solid performer, much like the Blessed Priest, but not in the same as obnoxious way as Blessed Priest, because this deck, you know, does well against a lot of like the slower strategies, because you just go Trogon 1 Gaming, or you go Lingering Zombie turn 1, which, you know, only new card in the deck, and you can just sort of curve out from there with buffs like the Sow the Soil, Claw Fury Adept, or the super freaking obnoxious Herald of Nature, and just roll a lot of decks that just happen to get like bad mulligans, even if like you're in unfavored matchups. This is like just like a really honest deck where, you know, you curve out aggressively, go face. If your opponent can answer what you're doing, you lose, but if not, you win every time. So while Aggro Druid may not be like the spiciest deck on this list, I feel like it's really hard to deny the power behind this deck. And while at higher ranks you're definitely going to encounter more Ramp Druid, I think across the general ladder, Aggro Druid is just like can just be such an obnoxious deck to queue into, because you're often expecting those Ramp Druids, and when they drop the Trogon 1, you're just like, oh god, what is happening to my life? And with that, those are what I think are the best decks in the game right now. So let me know what you think about these decks down in the comments, and while you're at it, you know, make sure to like and subscribe, because if you made it this far, you're probably digging something I'm doing, or you're just really good at spite watching me, I guess. I'm not really sure. But in the meantime, stay superior, and I'll catch y'all next one. Later. Dirt.